there's some machinery going off, so I'm hoping that it doesn't interfere too much with the recording of this content. Indeed, I'm thinking a little deeper about the Devizes police rings and the connections of Waterrose and Sons butcher shop to Warminster military functions, i.e. the defence intelligence networks operating out of Warminster military base. Indeed, there does seem to be a large overlap here, especially through networks of South African mercenaries who are operative for private security firms who handle the distribution of the organs. In Russia, interestingly indeed, there seems to be a network of South African mercenaries interconnected with Russian paramilitary networks who are basically all involved in the distribution of the organs. And this all interconnects to a South African intelligence operative by the name of Neil Johnson, who interestingly is interconnected with the Palantir setup, therefore is interconnected with Louis Mosley, fascist operative and the head of the UK branch of the Palantir Corporation. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, I seem to have got myself interwoven in a conflict between myself and Palantir by going up against the defence industry in Wiltshire. Indeed, the defence intelligence networks operating out of Warminster military base are crucial to this ongoing investigation, as the networks surrounding Anthony Graham are chiefly operative for DVD cells in the United Kingdom attempting to implement a technocracy in the United Kingdom, and this interweaves with the agenda of Palantir, who are chiefly illuminist technocrats operative to introduce a techno-fascist state in the United Kingdom. And it's interesting how all of this interconnects with the criminal operations of Devizes police. Indeed, Devizes police are operative for a Fourth Reich agenda and the erection of a police state, which involves their own criminal enterprises. Indeed, they are utilizing networks of local thugs all over Wiltshire to enforce their operative aims, interestingly. So it's all very interesting how all of this is interconnecting. Indeed, the Warminster military base network, headed by Anthony Graham, is itself a subsection of Defence Industrial Security Command, who are the chief intelligence branch of the munitions industry of the United Kingdom, and therefore they are pro-Cold War, i.e. these are networks that support the increase in hostilities with the Russian Federation because of the profit that the munitions industry would be able to make. Indeed, this explains a lot as to the reasons behind all these British defence firms getting so interwoven with the conflict in Ukraine, is because they are making an enormous profit from the sale of surplus weaponry. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, it's interesting how British defence contractors also supply weapons and munitions to Russian paramilitary networks as well as Ukrainian ones. So it's all very interesting that the conflict is being escalated specifically by Anglo-Israeli defence firms. So it's all very interesting to consider that these networks interconnect with Palantir, who are trying to create a technocracy on the ashes of the United Kingdom, or with the collapse of the system and the proliferation of drugs in society. Indeed, the majority of the drugs trade in the United Kingdom is coordinated by intelligence operatives interconnecting with DVD and Mossad cells. Indeed, the DVD and the Mossad are the chief architects of Fourth Reich technocracy ideology in the United Kingdom, and have basically penetrated the intelligence services of the United Kingdom to such an extent that the British intelligence services are not indistinct from the Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst. As I've stated before, the Mossad is a branch of the Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst, so it's all interconnecting indeed. The Epstein scandal was an attempt by a constitutionalist faction of the US intelligence services to shut down certain operations of Israeli intelligence in the United States via utilizing the Hebrews as scapegoats. So it's all very interesting to consider. However, this is all part of an overall Mossad agenda who are utilizing this constitutionalist faction of intelligence operatives for their own agenda. So it's all very interesting to consider. It's all an intelligence game of smoke and mirrors, and double smoke screens and triple smoke screens. Basically, the Epstein files are a deception from what is really going on. Indeed, what is really going on is the triumph of criminalism and black operations involving the organ trade. Indeed, the majority of homeless people going missing in the United States and the United Kingdom are utilized in the organ trade. So it's interesting to consider, indeed, many of the homeless that go missing in the United States are actually trafficked to Devizes, where they are slaughtered in sacrificial ceremonies by ritualists, including the butchers of Devizes, various networks of cultists within the Devizes framework, such as Moonraker Lodge number 8747 operatives, including the Grand Master of that lodge, Stephen Bridge. So it's interesting to consider, indeed, this network of Moonraker Lodge number 8747 is chiefly operative as part of a combined agenda with the United Grand Lodge of England and Grenville Lodge number 1787. Indeed, all of these networks are interconnected with the organ trade and are attempting to have me decapitated by a network of jihadis who are under their control, i.e. a Smiley assassin network, operating out of a techie in London. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, there are numerous networks now that want to kill me, including Mossad, various neo-Nazi elements within the Russian intelligence structure. Indeed, it's interesting to consider that these networks of South African mercenaries that help with the distribution of the Waterers and Sons butcher shop organ trade that interconnect with the defense intelligence, military intelligence capacity at Warminster. These South African mercenaries are themselves interconnected with various Russian neo-Nazi paramilitary organizations. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, these networks are utilized in Gladio operations by the CIA and MI6 as part of an overarching agenda to basically destabilize the Russian Federation as much as possible in view of the increase of hostilities that is commencing with the ongoing Second Cold War. So it's all very interesting how all of this interlinks. Indeed, I have been told recently that Vermin is operative for a Ukrainian nationalist entity, i.e. a faction of the Azov battalion, who are themselves maniac murder cultists. And indeed, Vermin is operative to kill me under contract from this network of South African mercenaries who are interconnected with the old South African BOSS intelligence services. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, stated before, there is numerous contractual alignments between the South African intelligence services and the Israeli intelligence services that date back to the early years of the Cold War. Indeed, there is an increasing amount of unity between Zionist and Nazi elements in terms of the global agenda. What with these networks being threatened by Chinese secret societies in the global power structure, indeed, I no longer believe that there is an overarching New World Order. Apart from certain structures that I.G. Farben has put into place, indeed, everything is too factional. So, indeed, although I've mentioned a constitutionalist faction wishing to release information about Mossad operations vis-a-vis Epstein, it seems even that this constitutionalist faction is a fascist element within the United States intelligence services. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, Devizes police coordinate 764, maniac murder cult, and Nordic resistance movements across Wiltshire in a combined effort to penetrate British society for Fourth Reich interests. So it's all very interesting to consider what is going on, and that Devizes police really are a key network in the implementation of techno-feudalism in the United Kingdom. So it's interesting considering my own previous involvement with the national anarchist movement, who were actually brainwashing me as a network interconnected with special branch operations. So it's interesting to consider the national anarchist movement were attempting to brainwash me and implement a hive mind scenario whereby I would become part of the Fourth Reich agenda. However, I saw through this matrix and broke out of it just in time, it seems. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, Faith of Ishmael adherents are very fond of Troy Southgate. So it's interesting to consider. Indeed, this is a matter of ongoing intrigue of mine. Indeed, Troy Southgate tends to align himself with the child rapist elements of the Faith of Ishmael. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, he even denies the Faith of Ishmael adherents are child rapists. So it's interesting to consider. Troy Southgate is a man who lives in denial, being that he is a serial abuser of young children himself. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, Adam Orms, Troy Southgate's sidekick, is operative in Lithuania as a coordinator of maniac murder cult activity. Indeed, he has ritually sacrificed several Lithuanian peasant children over the years that he has been stationed as part of an ongoing MI6 project in Lithuania. So it's interesting to consider the interconnectivity of the national anarchist movement with the British intelligence community and their attempts to operate Gladio 4 projects across the former Soviet zone. So it's interesting to consider all of this. Indeed, maniac murder cultists are effectively Sabbatean, though they would deny this. Indeed, the maniac murder cult target homeless people as they believe that they are superior to homeless people. So it's interesting to consider a lot of the disappearances of homeless people, especially in Eastern Europe, are the responsibility of the maniac murder cult, who are operating an organ harvesting scheme in collusion with various Ukrainian and Romanian mafiosi. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, this continent and his country are very quickly descending into chaos. Indeed, this has a lot to do with these networks of neo-Nazi accelerationist networks that are popping up. And indeed, despite their claimed accelerationism, these networks are all actually operative for the police state and are a part of the police state construct. So it's all very interesting to consider this. Indeed, Vermin denies any association with Khan or Devizes police. However, he is chiefly operative for Devizes police as a special constable, so it's interesting to consider all of this. Indeed, it's interesting to consider that Vermin, aka Cassius Lynch of Khan, is operating a kiddie porn and child sexual exploitation network in Khan, targeting 9 to 10-year-olds. So it's interesting to consider this guy who claims to be a respectable human being is really dark in his fetishism. So it's interesting to consider what kind of guy Vermin is, really. Indeed, there are networks of Greek mobsters also attempting to get a hit on Vermin, interestingly, because they've realized what he's up to. So it's interesting to consider not all criminal enterprises are necessarily involved in these particular trades that I speak of. So it's all very interesting to consider indeed. I'm still expecting to disappear, really. I don't know what's going to happen with me, indeed. The British intelligence services have screwed around with my mind so much, and I suffer from such severe amnesia of certain times in my life that it's really difficult to actually operate. Indeed, it's difficult to function. Indeed, my mental health conditions leave me severely mentally challenged. So it's interesting to consider, really, that I'm attempting to expose this large international criminal enterprise that has its nexus at Wiltshire Police Headquarters and Walter Rose and Sons Butcher's Shop. But I'm not really in the fit mental state to be able to do so. However, I'm not going to stop. Indeed, Devizes police are routinely questioning young people in some sort of capacity because they believe they may be making information up about the Devizes police rings. So it's interesting to consider, indeed, Devizes police are basically trying to crack down on anyone talking about the Devizes police rings, and are therefore cautioning people for talking about this stuff. It's interesting, therefore, Devizes police have gone into damage control. Indeed, I believe Devizes police may be a little bit scared now, which is interesting to consider. Indeed, Devizes police are truly some of the most disgusting human beings on the face of the planet and are operating an organ harvesting ring out of a supposedly respectable butcher's shop, as well as running networks of confidential police informants disguised as drug dealers and butchers who are actually serial child abusers. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, this voice to skull technology is trained on my brain waves, as is the radiation. So it's interesting to consider that this is carrying on. And they're still attempting to steal my soul, basically. Indeed, now that I've upgraded my medication, I'm finding it much easier to surf the microwaves. I get through the radiation. Indeed, I'm finding it much easier to deal with the voice to skull technology also. So it's interesting that the antipsychotics may be creating a barrier that the gang stalkers can't penetrate too easily. So it's all good, really, for me. Indeed, it's also interesting to consider the involvement of the Ferris family and their attempt to control my soul over the years through this voice to skull technology. Indeed, the majority of the gang stalkers operating the voice to skull technology, employed by Master Mason Samuel Buchan, are themselves relatives and associates of the Ferris family. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, the Ferris family are targeting me for the ugly, i.e. the United Grand Lodge of England, to attempt to stop certain exposures of Devizes from reaching the public domain. Indeed, I'm going to leave it there. That's all I really have to say.